Reddit, what is the oddest punishment you ever received as a child? I had to sit in the space between the refrigerator and the wall and stare at a sad face that my mom drew on a paper plate. It had yellow string for hair. My dad used to punish me and my sister by taking us to Home Depot and very slowly and meticulously explaining what all the different nuts and bolts were for. This made me laugh. My dad loves to explain things. If you ask him what time it is, he'll tell you how the watch works, and I don't think he would consider that a punishment. My dad was fed up with me not smiling, so he made me run around the outside of house. Smiling yet? No. Keep running. Similar, when my dad's girlfriend would come into the room, I'd say hi. She said I had no interpersonal skills and signed me up for modeling school. I had to wake up at 7 AM every Saturday for 4 months and go into the city on public transportation in 3-inch heels and a skirt. I was 13 and alone. I have no idea how nothing bad happened. Not me, but whenever I went to my childhood best friend's house, if anyone was fighting, they could only speak in haikus or limericks. It happened between me and her brother a couple times. I didn't like fighting with him. Whenever I did something bad, my mom got out the hammer and nails. She would make me hammer a nail into our backyard fence. Then when I apologized and she felt it sincere, she would make me take the nails out of the fence. She then told me, even though you apologized, the marks are still there. Jesus, that's some serious psychological punishment right there. You forgot to take the trash out. Never forget. Never forgive. My brother and I were fighting and my game show host wannabe mother thought it would be a great idea for me to get a switch for my brother and he get one for me from opposite sides of the yard. For those that don't know, a switch is a thin branch off a bush or small tree. You would pick the branch and then remove the smaller branches and leaves from it. Your parents would then whip your butt with it. It's also referred to as a hickory stick. Anyways, back to the story. I was feeling guilty about the whole thing. So I got my brother a very thin and small switch. Barely enough to hold. My butthole brother must have been in a real pissy mood. He came back literally dragging a fricking branch that half fallen from a tree. I have never felt so betrayed in my life. Thankfully, my mother thought it was funny as heck and decided to dismiss the whole thing and go back inside. I'd take the stick over the thin one every day. My stepfather was a creative beater. Whenever I would get in trouble, my father had me play him poker for grounding. As in, he pulled out the chips, gave us each some amount of money that correlates to how much he wants to ground me. He would set an initial sentence, and every 10 minutes I kept him playing was a day off my grounding. If I won, I got no grounding, and usually he would give me some sort of prize that lessens my next grounding automatically. Your dad is a sir. If my sister and I argued in front of my mother, she would shout family hug and we would all have to group hug no matter where we were and how angry we still were. It was certainly embarrassing in the middle of a mall or a bus stop or something. Well, I think it's cute. I bet you and your sister are close. When my dad gets angry, he gets very flustered and starts stuttering a bit, and usually he would ground me from whatever I was doing. For example, if I was watching TV, no TV for a week, etc. Well, one day a few years ago I did something to make him angry. I don't really remember what. He came into my room all red-faced and stuttering and saw me just lying on my bed, staring at the ceiling. He quickly looked around the room and the first thing he saw was my lamp. He unplugged it and took it with him. I was grounded from my lamp for a month. My dad made my brother and I assume what he called a chicken position. Bend over at the waist, then use both your arms to try and grab your ears, but they first had to go through your legs. It was excruciatingly painful, basically impossible to sustain it for more than a minute. My brother and I used to practice when we were alone, never managed more than 2 minutes before falling. He would make us do it for 5-10 minutes at a time. By the end of it you couldn't use your legs and would have to crawl around till the pain faded. That sounds like torture. The only time my mom ever physically struck me was when I wandered outside without her permission. She felt like she had to punish me, but wasn't sure what to do. So she had me hold out my hand, and she slapped it. So basically she gave me high five. My dad, Asian parent, used to slice green chilies in half and rub them on my lips when I swore as a child. Water didn't help. Dad, I'm not eating this. It tastes like cardboard. Dad replaces meal with conveniently located empty tissue box. I ate a whole tissue box for dinner out of stubbornness. Another I can relate to. Eat this or wear it. To this day I'll never eat spaghetti hoops, as they took too long to remove from my glasses. I was a huge bookworm as a kid and would sit down and read instead of doing my chores or homework, so my parents grounded me from books for a month. Nerd achievement unlocked. Yep, my sister and I got that too. It was one of the only things that worked on us. That and whacking our asses with said books. Laps around the house. This was my parents' go-to for punishing me. Say a bad word, 10 laps. Disrespect my mom, 20 laps. The highest I can remember doing is 50. It took me about an hour since our house is pretty big. In retrospect, that was a pretty imaginative punishment. Sounds like a first world problem. These laps take forever because a house is so large. So my junior year in high school I spent all my time on my Xbox. So my dad decided that my TV should not be usable during the week. I did my homework and all, but he is one of those dads that always tries to get you to do stuff that you don't really want to do. At any rate, he took the power cable of the TV and put it in this plastic tube and put 2 locks on either side. He never figured out that I would just move the TV we had in the storage closet into my room and play on that. He also did something similar with my PC because he thought I was on it too much. He basically gave me an hour of time per day to use it in a specific time period, something like between 9 and 10. If I tried to get on before that, I could not log on. As soon as the time expired, the computer would shut down. Of course, one night I was working on a paper and accidentally discovered something. I was about to go save, and just as I hit save as, the computer tried to shut down. Well, it gave me a prompt that it couldn't shut down with the dialog box open. I abused the heck out of that fact. I was a tricky little bastard. Upvote for abusing prenatal controls. One time when I was 16, I got caught sneaking out. I was anticipating some crazy punishment, but my mom ended up taking my curfew away. I was then allowed to stay out as late as I wanted as long as I told her where I would be. She said she would rather know where I was than have me sneaking around in case I got hurt or into some trouble. My mom was awesome. My mom uses the phrase on the lawn at dawn in regards to my curfew. I got caught spitting at school. I was sat down in front of the headmaster, principal's office with a bucket and told to fill it with my own spit. They stopped the punishment when a load of visitors to the school saw this kid parked just inside the main entrance repeatedly spitting into a bucket. Should have given them a show and puked into it. Once when my brother and I wouldn't stop fighting, my dad said, well, looks like you all need to spend more time together. He went and got some rope and tied us together facing each other. We still tried to fight, but it got weird after a while, so we gave up. I don't know if that's a punishment, creative problem solving, or both. Neither of us got a boner. The end. I wasn't allowed to watch Tonatopia. I still don't know why he thought that was a good punishment. I had never even watched it. Probably confused it with Pokemons. If my room was a mess, Mom would bring in a trash can and a hammer. She would destroy everything I owned that was on the floor or in sight, and make me throw it away. Really sucked when she did it about 3 days after Christmas. I lost literally every gift I had received. I know that feel, bro. My dad would get mad and come into my room and just go into Hulk rage and throw crap around and break tons of stuff when I upset him. When it was over, I would just stare down at the insane amount of garbage he just created in complete awe and shock. I was told I wasn't allowed to get my driving permit because my sister or I, neither remembered who was the culprit, left a used butter knife in the sink without washing. That was indicative that we were not responsible enough to drive, somehow. I'm hearing impaired. One time, when I was 12 or 13, I forged a teacher's signature and got caught by my mom. So, she made me stand up straight in a corner but could not lean against the walls. Then she took my hearing aids out and turned off all the lights in that part of the house and made me stand there for 3 hours with no breaks. I still feel the punishment was way too harsh and very odd, considering she basically used my disability to enhance the punishment. Yeah, your mom was a bee for doing that. My mother took a turn for the crazy when I was in 7th grade. Highlights include, locking up the TV and computer 24/7. To do homework on the computer I was usually subjected to 3 hours and of maculark. Instead, I learned how to pick locks, while learning to drive. I did 2 hours of maculark to go to a friend's house. I drove there, didn't park to her satisfaction, wasn't allowed to go, and had to drive home. To this day I have no idea what I did wrong. When school was in session, I was not allowed to leave the house other than to go to and from school, violin practice, and church. I was not allowed to get a driver's license until 18 to reinforce this. My mother disagreed with me that I shouldn't go to school when it was delayed 2 hours for snow cold. This was Rochester, MN. I had to walk to school in a blizzard, find out that the school was closed, walk back, go inside, and then get kicked out of the house. If the garage wasn't heated, barely above freezing, I don't know what I would have done. That lasted until my dad got home, a good hour later. Love you, Mom. When I was younger, like 3 or 4, the song Don't Worry, Be Happy by Bobby McFerrin used to make me really sad for some reason, which led me to bawling my eyes out. So, whenever I did something wrong, my parents would make me sit down in the dining room alone and then blast that song throughout the house until I was basically hyperventilating from crying so much. Whenever I hear it now, I have to leave or PTSD like flashbacks will start happening and I'll just start crying for no reason. To be fair, it is a sad song when you listen to the lyrics. My 2nd grade teacher would punish any student who doesn't follow along during classroom reading time. Every student in the class would read a few sentences aloud and if you weren't following along, you would have to remain standing for the rest of the class. Not the worst punishment but the snickering of classmates at this age made up for the embarrassment. I luckily got out of this pickle by pretending to forget how to pronounce the word. The word was this. I once kicked a ball through a glass window. Pops sat me down after dinner and gave me a 2-hour lecture on China's transition to communism. To this day I'm wary of anyone who wants to force a proletariat-based system on an agrarian society. I wasn't allowed to have a pet cat because I emptied my pencil sharpener into the trash can in my room instead of the one in the kitchen. When I was younger I wanted a Power Ranger birthday cake. It wasn't my birthday, and it was for 16 people, but I wouldn't let it drop. So my mum brought it for me. She sat me down on a table, and clearly stated that she was not going to cook me anything until I ate the entire cake. It took me 3 days to eat that cake, and true to her word she refused to cook me anything else. I never asked for anything again, nor did I carry on watching Power Rangers haha. When my sister and I would fight, my dad made us stand out in the front yard and hug, while telling each other that you love them. It was incredibly embarrassing, especially when we turned like 12. Our friends would stand out on the street and laugh at us. I couldn't do homework until after dinner, and only after I had finished cleaning the table off, putting away the food, and filling the dishwasher. Since there were 6 of us in the house at a time, that took about an hour. No one else would help. One time I was trying to finish a paper for school that was due after Christmas break. I had my computer privileges revoked and my backpack confiscated and locked in the car until I finished tearing down the Christmas tree and putting the boxes of ornaments back in the basement. When I argued the point, I wasn't allowed to do homework for 2 weeks. She didn't know that my class schedule included a study hall. I ran passes for the office during it. Teachers would see me doing my homework, ask why I was waiting until the last minute. I'd explain. They'd shake their heads and walk away. It helped that I was a good student. Better do the dishes, son, because if you do not do your chores it will be the only thing you can do for a living. My parents had already grounded me in every other way, so they told me I couldn't read any books. I'd never read more than during that punishment. My mom would make us do 30-50 push-ups when we misbehaved in elementary middle school. I guess because it made us too tired to misbehave. And the punishment for lying was writing essays about morality. I asked my grandmother to bring our first cat over to mom's apartment, and after a nice lunch, Kitten suddenly disappeared. My mom beat me until I couldn't move because she thought the cat had jumped out the window and because, of course, it was my fault. Turned out the cat hid in the cupboard. And another odd punishment was when she beat me with a wooden spoon until it nearly broke because I got 2 B's in French in 4th grade. Your mother is awful and a C. We called it the Dead Cockroach. Basically, my mom and stepdad would make us lay on our backs and hold a phone book straight up while our legs were up too. Generally, we were only in this position for 15 or so minutes, but sometimes an hour or more. No television, no radio, just a cold tile floor and a heavy butt book. Don't do that again. Insert random crap a kid would do. Whack. Don't start crying. Whack, I mean it. Don't start crying. Whack. I'll give you something to cry about. Whack whack whack. Irish mammy punishment. Harsh but no just freaking harsh. The wooden spoon. Shudders. I went to a Catholic school in 4th and 5th grade and was one of only 3 or 4 kids in my class who wasn't Catholic. We had to go to mass etc, but for some things, we just stayed in the class while the rest of them did their thing. At one mass I had to attend, I wanted to see what the whole Eucharist thing was all about, so I got in line and got me some body of Jesus too. My teacher and the principal about had a crap fit over that. I spent the rest of that day with my nose stuck in a little chalk circle drawn just high enough on the chalkboard for my nose to reach it, standing on tiptoes. That really sucked. By the end of the day, the little circle was pretty much a snot smear and I looked quite the sight with chalk all over my face and shirt and little green crisscross tie. At least my classmates weren't laughing at me anymore. By then, I pretty much had all their sympathy. No Jesus for you, you dirty heathen. Once, my brother, sister and I were caught arguing. No surprise, siblings argue from time to time. But we were killing my mom and stepdad's buzz apparently. They were getting high, and we were in the backyard screaming at each other. So, they told us to stand in a corner. We each found a corner, and as soon as we get straightened out, my mom goes around to each of us and smacks us with razor strap on the butt and legs. Funny, I thought that potheads were relatively non-violent. 10 smacks for each of us. Initially read that you both were struck with a razor strap on. My parents found a stash of liquor under my bed in high school. I was really into horticulture, and for some reason my mom figured having me prune her irises would be fair punishment. Also, she now expected me to mow the lawn, which I did weekly without being asked. TLDR, I trimmed my mom's bushes and maintained her lawn. My parents would make me go outside and play instead of letting me read in peace. I quickly learned to stash old battered books around the woods near our house. They also gave me an old black and white TV to try to get me to watch more TV and stop reading at night instead of reading. Same as OP except with vinegar. I actually developed a liking for it after a while, and I'm pretty immune to spicy food, which caused my mom to give up with Tabasco. I was 9 or so, and a really super freaking pee-off little kid. I slammed my bedroom door hard. My dad came in and made me open and shut it gently 20 times. And when I was done he made me curtsy. When it came to light that I chronically neglected my homework, my father mandated a 2-hour homework session every night, including weekends. He bought me a set of encyclopedias and I had to spend any extra time from those 2 hours reading from cover to cover. I now know an enormous amount of useless facts. My parents loved weird and wonderful punishments. Amongst other things, I had to change into and out of my PJs 10 times, got locked in the house with the alarm system on across the ground floor and kitchen so I couldn't get any food on each Saturday and Sunday of the weekend all through school. Bedtimes were strict, gaining the right to stay up 1 hour more each year of your age and no further, and if I stayed in bed late on a Sunday morning my mum would come up and throw everything I owned at me. This on one occasion extended to a goldfish tank, complete with the fish, and several times the drawers from my wardrobe were thrown. You'd think I was a horrible child. Most of this was caused by having an untidy room. Oh, and they used to confiscate my light bulb. Not really odd, but once when I was 8 or 9 I did something and my punishment was not being able to skate at the skating rink that night when my family went. I would have to sit and watch. I made a bargain with my mom and asked if I could be spanked instead so I could go skating. She spanked me and I was able to skate. She still brings it up to this day. Remember that time you begged me to spank you? My mom took away a book, not for school, because I was reading too much and wasn't getting any real work done. It's too bad for her she didn't take away my Xbox, computer, and still allowed me to go to lacrosse practice at night. My mom used to cut off my cable TV a lot. Literally, she'd chop the end off the coax cable. Then whenever she felt like it, she'd come strip back the cable jacket and plug in the bare wire. Of course it didn't take me long to figure out how to fix it myself, so she started taking and hiding the cable instead. I'm not even sure what I did to pee her off most of the time. She had a lot of irrational rage. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.